All right. Hello, friends of Balsamiq. This is Peldi, and today I'm here with John Fitzpatrick of Food for Change. And we're going to be doing some wireframing, doing some strategizing, and learning all about what they're trying to do. So, John, why don't you take it away and introduce yourself?
Okay, so my name is John Fitzpatrick, and I'm a volunteer with an organisation called Food for Change. The main idea behind Food for Change is to find unused farmland in cities around Australia, and perhaps even casting a wider net in future, but for setting up a model for growing food on that unused land to distribute to those in need through other food agencies. It's been going for about a year now, and since planting the first seedlings in February 2017, we've harvested about $18,000 worth of food in terms of Australian dollars to pass on to those in need. So that part's going pretty well. The founder of the charity has since come up with the idea of also looking into food rescue, which is another area where it can help to feed those who are going hungry. The idea being that a lot of food rescue happens already, but it's usually on a fairly large scale where large supermarkets pass on surplus food to aid organisations. But there's a lot of food that ends up in landfill and goes to waste because the quantities are too small to justify the logistics behind doing the collections and things like that. So what we're hoping to do is to develop an app to make it easier to coordinate this sort of thing, to allow people on a smaller scale, for example, small shops and even individuals and families who want to donate food they have left over to food aid agencies. And the idea is to make it easier to do this, perhaps to look at having drop-off points, collection points, separate from the agencies themselves, where it's close by and it's very convenient for people to make the donations. So we're still in the early stages. We've got some an idea of essentially the workflow that we want to do to track these donations, but I got to the point of looking to start developing it. I have a little bit of a systems development background, but it came clear after I'd done a little bit of work that I needed to actually really do some wireframing just to get the ideas firmed up before we go too far with the development process.
Great. So I'll be happy to help. Do you want to show us where you are? Do you have some diagrams or some sort of spec that we can start from?
Yeah, so the main thing is, coming from a systems background, I've tended to think in terms of data to start with.
Sure.
And so what I've done is come up with a couple of diagrams. One is a workflow, which tracks, one is a data object diagram, which is a bit like a database diagram. And then another, and that's got things like the various users involved, the donation record, and then the data associated with that, and how what the relationships are. And then another diagram which maps out the workflow. So it shows how a donation gets started and then transitions from being a new donation to being dropped off to being collected and then
perfect.
archived, etc. One of the ideas we have for this is that in order to encourage people to use it, and also for the agencies to know how effective it's been, is that we want to track, if possible, try to track the donations so that we can give people an idea of the impact that they're making as well. So it's a tricky one because we want to strike a balance between making it easy for people to log a donation, actually, just because the main thing is that the food gets to people.
Right.
But if we can track the data as we go through it, then we hope that we can give people an idea of the sort of feedback, some feedback on, on the sort of value of the contributions that they're making.
Cool. Okay, do you want to share your screen?
Yes, sure. Let me... Here we go. So this is the first diagram, which shows the data objects and the relationships.
Okay.
It's a little bit in reverse, actually. If we're doing the typical Western thing of going from left to right, the objects have kind of ended up going from right to left in terms of how a donation might work. Basically, in fact, what might be easier if I go through the workflow first?
Sure.
Because it makes sense to talk about things in terms of donations. So the idea here, this is just a swimming lane diagram to show the different groups involved. So we've got a donor at the top lane. So
sorry, just so I understand, donor would be maybe a restaurant?
It could be a restaurant, yeah, or say a bakery who has bread, sandwiches left over at the end of. Okay,
so not like a giant supermarket chain because they already have a way to do this. This is more for many more smaller players, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is a little bit, there's a bit of fluidity about what exactly a donor is, though, in terms of whether or not it's an individual, say if they're working for that organization, or if it's an individual with their own food they want to donate.
Oh, okay.
So when I first spoke to Matt, who is, I guess, the product owner in this situation, he thought it could be both. The main idea is that people will be able to sign up for it themselves as well. So it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily want to.
It could be a private.
Exactly, yeah. And so we don't necessarily want to restrict the sign-up process either.
Sure, okay.
This part will be fairly public and allow people to self-select and self-sign up and just get going.
Okay, great.
The next step, so the idea is for them to want to create, I guess, log a donation, the fact that they want to make a donation.
Okay.
And so I've got the idea of a status field here. So it would be a simple idea of having a field against a donation object that tracks the current state of it.
Okay.
And so when they create one, it starts off in a new state.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that actually they can search for what we'll call, the name hasn't been fully decided, but at the moment I'm using the term rescue hub. So this could either be the aid organization themselves, so their address if they're nearby, but maybe we're looking at also establishing relationships with other places that could store the food temporarily in a convenient central hub that the aid organization could then collect on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be a large hardware store chain that has some spare space where they can set up some fridges and some, storage shelves where donations could be stored whilst before the aid workers come and collect it. So essentially, once it gets to there, though, it's marked as delivered. And then we have I call it a charity here, but they're not all necessarily officially charities. So we're trying to move towards the term food aid organizations.
Okay.
And essentially, they'll receive a notification if there's food that's been dropped at their hub. So they then go and collect it, mark it as collected, and then essentially, once it's been processed, we can archive it. The idea being that we'll then expose some of the data to allow them to have reports on the amount of food that's been donated and the overall value as well.
Got it. Okay, great. Yeah, that's nice and clean.
And so on the other diagram, this is what we've started with. Essentially, in the middle, you've got the donation, which at the moment I've got with a kind of a master detail relationship sort of thing going on here. So donation items, where there might be multiple items. Might be a few loaves of bread, I don't know, a box of vegetables or whatever.
Right.
Notes, I'm thinking is just a way of keeping track of it's kind of like a log entry.
Sure. Yeah.
So when it moves from one state to the other, we'll essentially auto-insert a record into there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a relationship with the hub itself. So when they start the donation, essentially it's linked to a hub from the start.
Yeah.
If you get the main thing, probably what I'm envisaging there is that we'll probably have some sort of map search. So show me food collection hubs near me,
or
within 10 kilometers or whatever. And then they can then select the hub they want to go to, and then that kicks off the recording of the rest of the donation.
Sure.
Then on this side, I've called it a donor rep. My original thought this may change since I've spoken to Matt recently. They work for a donor organization.
Okay.
And so essentially they're the logged in user. So all of them are users of flanking on the side here. You've got reps on the right side or donors on the right side. And on the left side, you've got the charity or food aid organizations. So they're the objects at the moment that I see with data objects that we would want to have interacting in the system. So the donor rep or donor logs their donation, and then essentially it goes into the intermediate state in the hub, and then the charity rep, once it's collected, they mark it as collected.
Right. There's probably also the rescue hub manager.
Yeah, that's right. Which could be the same as the charity or the food aid rep as well.
Yeah,
it's the same exactly. So I think our idea as well is to, in as much as possible, develop it iteratively as well.
Sure. Of course.
This is a fairly new thing. It's reasonably innovative, I think. So what we wanted to try and do is focus on usability early on, but at the same time, we want to work out, almost test to see how well it works, and then evolve as we go.
Of course. Okay. This is great. This is a great starting point. It's very clear who the players are and what they want to do, which is I think enough for us to start thinking about some UIs. Should we do that?
Yeah, sure. That sounds great.
All right. So I'll share my screen instead. Okay, so I started a Balsamiq Cloud project for us, and let's see what we can do. And I have those diagrams that you shared with me here as well. So,
actually, just one other quick comment, Peldi, is I know in some other sessions you've talked about, say, the format for the app, and one of the things that might be worth pointing out now is that this is at least initially going to be developed as a web app.
Okay. Okay, great.
But, with the possibility of using a responsive layout, essentially, so it should work fairly well, I think, in both, a desktop web screen and the mobile browser.
It'll be responsive for mobile browser. Okay, I made a note. That's very good to know. That will help us. Okay, so how about we start with the actors?
Sure.
Which are, you said the donation rep?
Yeah.
Donation
so this one is
manager, right? Well, I think we're gonna have to focus on the most important ones to start, but we can list them all, right? Hub manager, charity manager, charity rep. Did I get them all?
Yeah. So to prioritize that, the managers are probably the less important ones.
Yeah.
They're kind of more the admin level. Whereas really the usability, the important part of the usability is to make sure it's easy for the individuals to just get the main transactions.
Right. So so why don't we try to workflows? Why don't we try to model a donation from start to finish?
That sounds good. Yeah.
Right. So what we're going to have to do is donation manager. I'll call it PM. Starts donation. PM brings it to the hub. Charity manager, DM and CM. Charity manager is notified, right, of new donation. Is that right? And then
that'll be the rough workflow. Yeah.
Picks up from the hub and then marks as collected, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. There'll be some logistics that we need to figure out as part of it as well. Some of the things I've anticipated is, for example, obviously, well, if it's a hub that's not dedicated to this, it will probably have finite space for taking donations as well.
Right.
So appreciate the scope of what we can do today is a little bit limited, but some of the things I'm conscious of is, say, there's almost an inventory management element where,
right,
as donations are dropped off, we need to know, well, okay, this much fridge space is taken up.
Right. Got it.
That needs to be fed back to the users who are searching for somewhere to drop off.
Right. Got it. Okay. Yeah. So should we try and do this workflow?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
That should be good. All right. So let's do a super simple. Basically, just go a little bit in more detail than what you have here. Okay.
Yep. Sure.
And then we'll zoom in more and more. So, let's see. What I would say is doing a shape like you did, which is good. So, first is DM signs up and log in. I think we can give that and logs in. This is sort of standard web app. Right, you sign up with a role. I don't think we need to design that right now. DM wants start a new donation, right?
Yeah, this is the critical part.
Yeah,
this needs to be the part that's easy to use.
Let's focus on this. So, what? Let's put ourselves in their shoes. What should they see? What are their questions? Right. First is, what are the hubs closest to me?
That's pretty much it. Right. I think, if you think about trying to reduce as much of the friction as possible to doing the...
Now, will there be different hubs depending on what the donation is, or do you think they're going to likely always use the same hub?
That's a good one. There are possibly different features. A lot of the time it's non-perishable food that is donated, tinned food and things like that. In that case, I guess all of them will be capable of taking that sort of thing.
Right.
But it may be that some of them have, the limited capacity for perishable food and refrigeration.
Right. But I guess I'm thinking, trying to make it, as smooth as possible. It seems to me that, say, a bakery will always have the same kind of donation. And we'll always want to bring it to the same spot, right?
Yep.
So I'm thinking that maybe the hub selection is something that happens here and picks their favorite hub, right? You do it. You do it during setup, and then we just remember it for you, so you don't have to do it. So maybe it's worth designing this a little bit, because it's not just a standard sign up and login.
Yep.
But then now, say that's done. When they want to start a new donation, what do you want them to do? You want them to specify what it is?
We've been tossing up ideas about this as well, actually, which isn't easy for a discussion like this. Ideally, we'd like to collect as much data as possible, because then that gives us feedback on how the system is going. But I guess, and from me, my point of view as a developer, that's one thing I've had top of mind. But at the same time, if someone doesn't really have time to log the detailed information, then we don't really want to get in the way of them making the donation.
Right. Okay. If we can do it quickly.
So it's an interesting one.
So what if, to track, have you thought of the idea of giving people a code, and without the code, they can't bring it to the hub?
I've thought of that, actually, so even, almost pre-generating codes. One of the things is actually, if we're moving physical items around, how do we actually track them easily? I've had the idea of even doing, say, pre-printed QR codes that you could ship to people.
Okay. We could do that. I mean, what about iteration number one is that they get a code like GWF3X and they can write it on the package itself.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. That sort of short hash type code.
And then I think the QR can come later to if it works. You know, maybe it works well enough that you don't need to make it any more complicated than that.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So yeah, in the spirit of iteration, let's just give them a code that they can write. Start. Okay, and then that's really their goal here is to get a code so they can go and deliver it, right?
That's it, yeah.
Okay, and then DM delivers the donation. So this is sort of a in-person, wow, that's kind of crappy. Okay, there we go. In-person step. But then what we want him to do is, after that is DM marks the donation as delivered, right? We want him to do that. Or we can either do this, or we can have that the hub manager is responsible for recording it as delivered. But I don't know who should do this. Or it could be even the charity manager that when they go and pick him up, they record him as collected. But now it seems to me that it should be, I don't know, who do you think should have this burden, marking it as delivered?
Well, that's an interesting one because with what we're thinking of doing, there may not always be a hub manager as well.
Right.
So, that's an interesting one. It's a bit of a sticking point.
Right. Someone needs to have an incentive to do this.
Yeah.
I don't think it can be the charity manager because they need, this step is what notifies them that there's something to collect. So they don't even know.
Yeah.
And if there is no hub manager, then the last person remaining is the donation manager.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we need to give them some sort of incentive to do so.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, so as part of the setup for this, we've put a landing page form up to capture interest.
Mm-hmm.
We've had quite a few people submit their details to be volunteers and to actually be notified when we get this up and running. So there is a bit of interest already that we've gauged. So I think it's probably fair to assume that if someone is wanting to go to the trouble of donating food, that
right.
Well, part of it is Matt, the product owner. He's had the idea of having this feature called Track Your Impact, so that when you do mark it as delivered and it gets collected, that you'll get an email or some sort of notification that this is what you've done and this this is how many people you've helped, etc.
Yeah. How to do this? A little, just a quick incentive could be that in the app, the pending donations take up most of the space. They're kind of annoying until you say delivered. That might be enough appeal to people's OCD to get their plate clean, basically. But we could also do email reminders to say, hey, 4 hours later, is this still click here to donate to mark it done if you've done it. Okay, should we try to start with these?
That sounds good. Yeah, because I think this is the part to streamline as much as possible to encourage because again. On the other side of it, on the charity side, it's going to be, they'll have more incentive to keep track of things.
Right.
I think.
Right. Okay, so what part do you want to do? You want to do this picking the hub during sign up, or do you want to go straight into the donation?
I think the donation part might be the best part to
all right, let's go there. Let's go there. I'm going to start a new wireframe.
This looked like a good stopping point for this episode, so we'll continue this with part 2 in the next week's video. Thanks for watching.